he was a professor at University College London and Queen Mary College, where I had the luck to be one of his many, I don't know, 40 now PhD students. And so Mel is one of the most prominent researchers in virtual reality. And I mean, that's can be seen also by the many awards and prizes that he won, like the IEEE VR Career Award, the Hubble Research Prize, the 2 advanced CRC grants. And you know, he wrote countless papers in VR with huge impact in the field. I mean, personally, I should say that during the many years that I had the luck to work with Mel, I was always amazed by the incredible ability to come up with crazy ideas. You know, always think out of the box with these crazy ideas that I don't know how he ever came up with them, but they always resulted in pioneering, groundbreaking work, which I'm sure we will see some of it today. So thanks, Mel, for coming.
So thanks very much for the introduction to one of my best ever, or my best ever PhD student. So thanks very much for inviting me. Can you hear me okay? And although this conference is about avatars, I will be showing you some examples of, well, everything I show has got involving avatars of different kind, but in a context of how we've been using them in virtual reality. And the theme of what I'm going to talk about is using virtual reality to go beyond reality, because there's a lot of important work where virtual reality is simply used to reproduce reality, and that's very important for training and education and so on. But what I'm going to try to show today are some examples where you go beyond reality, yet nevertheless still potentially have a positive effect of people in real life. So I'm going to briefly say something about the virtual reality, the illusions that virtual reality generates. Then I'm going to do, actually, although I've written here 2, there's going to be 3 applications of virtual reality. One to do with solving personal problems and another one to do with solving social problems. Then I'll show you something about what we've been working on in the ERC Motive project. So let's start with this.
If dreams could be sold, what would you buy? The poet's question may soon have a practical answer.
The goal of virtual reality is simple. It's total submersion, complete detachment from reality.
The doors are opening on a world where the line between reality and illusion has dissolved.
I want to fly over Mars. I want to experience
The mind of the viewer and the heart of the computer. Known as virtual reality, or VR, this new technology uses pictures and sounds to wrap around your senses.
There's a latency on my computer and that, so it's a bit confusing. So the interesting thing about that was done in the early 1990s, and people think that virtual reality was invented like 5 years ago or something, but it's been going a really long time. So the first head-mounted display in a form that we know today, it was from Ivan Sutherland, the ultimate display in the mid-1960s, and all the, not the hardware, but the concepts of the hardware are the same today as they were then. So you have the 2 screens that you look through, one with a left eye image, one with a right eye image. The brain fuses those into one overall stereo image. You have head tracking, so what you see in the virtual reality depends on where you're looking. Of course, the head tracking in those days was done with these huge mechanical devices. These days it's done like with just inside-out computer vision techniques, but the concepts are the same. So this is, I don't know if this is going to work, but it's just someone wearing one of these head-mounted displays and moving around. And also, I'd also say that virtual reality right from the start, from the early 1990s, was multiple people. You think of virtual reality as an experience that you just do alone, but right from the early 1990s, there's this paper called Reality Built for Two, where 2 people can simultaneously be in the same virtual reality, see representations of each other, and so on. So all these concepts like the metaverse and stuff like that, None of them are really new. It's just the way it's done today is quite different in terms of hardware and, of course, the computational facilities that you need. So just around 8 years ago, our lab setup cost €50,000 for the head-mounted display, for the body tracking, and so on. Now, just with this, €400, we can do actually not just the same as we did 8 years ago, but better. And the whole application can run inside the head-mounted display. You don't even need a separate computer to drive the head-mounted display. Years ago, you had to buy a very expensive parallel computing machine, like a silicon graphics machine, to drive the VR. Nowadays, it's all done inside a phone. So the concepts are very similar or are the same, but the way it's delivered is rather different today. And now it has the possibility to become a mass market. So why does virtual reality work at all? I argue that there's these illusions that it generates which lead to people behaving in virtual reality much as they would in reality. So the first illusion I call place illusion. This is the illusion I am here. I'm in this place that my senses are showing to me. And why does this work? This is like what you get for free with virtual reality. It relies on natural sensory motor contingencies. Sensory motor contingencies are how we use our body to perceive. So if I want to see what's underneath there, I just move my body and I look up. If I want to see over here, I just turn over there. So with head tracking and other types of tracking in virtual reality, you more or less get natural sensory motor contingencies. And the simplest hypothesis for the brain to assume is this is where I am, because in everyday life, when you walk around looking around and moving your body to perceive, you are where you are. And in virtual reality, the brain makes this hypothesis, this is where I am. Of course, cognitively, you know it's not true. So all of these illusions are in spite of you knowing they're not true. But you can't help yourself. If you're standing in front of a virtual pit in virtual reality, a precipice, typically your heart rate will go up and you'll step back from the pit. You'll step back from the precipice. Why? Because in all your life, whenever you've seen a precipice, it's been there. And the simplest hypothesis for the brain to make is this precipice is really here. Even if you're saying to yourself on the inside, I know it's not here, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't stop your heart racing. So the next one, which is far more interesting and far more difficult, is plausibility. So this is the illusion that the place illusion is a static illusion. Nothing might be going on there. All that's happening is you're moving your head, for example. But plausibility is to do with events. These events are really happening. It's the illusion that the events are really happening. Like an avatar comes over to you and smiles, you find yourself smiling back, even though you know you're just looking at some pixels on a screen and there's nobody there. So this depends on the environment being responsive to your actions, like you look at an avatar and he looks back at you. Personal, that like an avatar looks at you or calls your name or something like that. And the last one is congruency, which means that if the environment depicts something that you know about in real life, like you're a doctor and it's simulating a doctor's surgery with a patient, then everything has to be as you expect. A very small detail can destroy plausibility. Like we did an experiment with general practitioners, doctors in the UK, who were confronted by patients, and everything was fine, but some of them afterwards complained, there was a computer on my desk and I couldn't read what was on it, because if you've been to a doctor lately, they don't really look at you anymore, they only look at the computer. And when they couldn't do that, this was a detail that upset their plausibility. The third one is body ownership. So in virtual reality, as you'll see, we can program it so that when you look down towards yourself, you see a life-size virtual body replacing your real body. As you move, if you've got body tracking, as you move, the body moves with you, or you can see a reflection in a mirror. Under the right circumstances, you'll have the illusion, this is my body. Of course, you know it's not, but you'll have that illusion. And this is based on bodily multisensory integration. You move and the virtual body moves with you. You see something touch your virtual hand and you feel something on your real hand. The multisensory integration, and of course the first person perspective. of seeing a life-size body when you look down towards yourself. The last one is co-presence. This is like a corollary of all the others, is that if there's other virtual humans in the environment with you, you have the illusion that you're here with the other people. And this depends on natural sensory motor contingencies, like you can walk round an avatar of another person. They behave plausibly. You have a body and they have a body. So all of the above, if they're done correctly, lead to this illusion of co-presence. So let me show you an example, and I'll run this video.
Flying high isn't fun for everyone, though.
Hello, world.
Acrophobia, or fear of heights, is one of the most common phobias, but this virtual reality therapy hopes to help.
Sweating again.
Chan here can confidently fly a plane, but when it comes to heights in general, it's a different story.
So he has various tasks to do, like reach over the precipice and pull back something. This is a project we did with people at University of Oxford. We built this environment and they were the clinical psychologists. And this man is very scared, but after experiencing this kind of thing several times, it improved his fear of heights.
But I can jump in an aeroplane and fly an aeroplane. That's a different...
So how is it possible that people become anxious in this virtual scene? For this to happen, the participants must have these illusions. They're in a different place. He's standing on the building. This relies on the sensory motor contingencies. These events are really happening, like there's a cat out there stuck on a tree and he's got to somehow pull it back. In spite of knowing that these are illusions, so this presence, the place illusion and the plausibility, they tend to lead to realistic behavior because, as I said, overall the safe computation for the brain to make is that this is really happening. Now I'll say something about body ownership. Actually, I'll just say it from this video. The latency here is really confusing. So on the left-hand side is a rubber hand, and on the right-hand side is the person's real hand that they can't see because it's hidden by that barrier. So the experimenter is causing multisensory integration. He's tapping and stroking the real hand and the rubber hand, and people have the illusion that the rubber hand is theirs because they see a rubber hand in front of them, they see it being touched, and they feel the touch. So the brain unites all of these different multisensory aspects into one overall percept. The rubber hand is my hand. So this is a paradigmatic paper in Nature in 1998, a one-page paper that's led to an enormous amount of research on how the brain represents the body. So one way we do this in virtual reality is we use visual motor synchrony instead of visual tactile. So you see your virtual body, life-size, you move and the body moves with you. The brain integrates your vision with the motor activity and the proprioception, and it gives you the illusion this is your body. So there's the other even more interesting aspect, and this has been demonstrated many, many times that this gives this illusion. The other very interesting aspect of this is that the type of body you have can lead to changes in your attitudes, behaviors, physical responses, responses to pain, and so on. So, for example, we've done several studies, and others too, that have been replicated many times, that if you take, in quotes, white people and you put them in a black body for a few minutes with this kind of setup, their implicit racial bias will decrease, and that decrease will last for some time afterwards. If you put adults in a child body, they will see the world as larger compared with being in an adult-shaped body of the same height as the child. So it's not the height that's causing it, it's the shape of the body. And also their attitudes will change to more childlike. There's various other things that I don't have time to go into, but I just mentioned pain reduction. The type of body you have will affect how long it is you respond to a pain stimuli. If you're embodied as Albert Einstein, a body that looks like Einstein, you'll do better in a cognitive test than if it's just another body. And also we've done work using this kind of thing on fear of death. So it's very powerful. So the first example of this I'm going to talk about is called, is to do with self-counseling, and it's based on the idea of Solomon's paradox, that we can see solutions to other people's problems more easily than we can to our own. So a friend comes to you, they describe a problem, you can immediately see things about it that they can't see because they're stuck in their normal ways of thinking. So Solomon's paradox, based on the biblical King Solomon, who is very clever at solving problems of the state, but not for his own life. So the idea is that people reason more wisely about other people's problems than their own. And so what we do is that in this setup, we make you have a personal problem, say, and we make you like the friend. So I'll show you how this works. It's called Converse-Self, Conversations with Yourself in Virtual Reality. You become the friend, you have a conversation with your lookalike self. So this is how it works. I have to watch this screen rather than that one. Okay, this is how it works. So first of all, we scan the person, and then we make an avatar that looks like them, that they can see in the mirror, that it moves like them, and so on. Then we can embody someone as themselves. And then in virtual reality, we can embody people as anyone. For example, we can embody you as Sigmund Freud, and using first-person perspective and real-time motion capture. And then the idea is that you explain your problem to Sigmund Freud and embody it as yourself. And then you become Sigmund Freud, and you see and hear yourself explain the problem. So you have all your voice, the body gestures, the appearance looks like you. And then embodied as Freud, you can give an answer back to yourself and say, well, why don't you think about it this way? And remember, the type of body you have affects your attitudes, behaviors, and so on. So the idea is that being Freud is very important. I wouldn't have chosen Freud, but we did a survey before the experiment amongst the potential, the population that we were going to sample from. We asked them, who would you like to describe a personal problem to? And second was Angelina Jolie, and first was Freud. So we chose Freud, but I think Angelina Jolie would have been more interesting. So this is how it looks. So first we scan the person. Wind this forward a bit. And then they have a discussion with a counsellor who only helps them formulate the problem in a structured sentence.
Better care of my health. And usually I'm sitting for 8 hours in my job.
And then a week later they come back and they have a virtual reality experience, which is this one.
Please look down towards your body. Please look down towards your body. Raise your right hand. Now.
I see. I have to have the sound on here.
When the light next to you turns green, explain the problem to the person in front of you.
So when I notice that I'm delaying going to the gym after I come back from work, I think that I should go because I want to take care of my health.
Now listen to the person in front of you, and when the light next to you turns green, reply and try to help them find a solution.
So when I notice that I am delaying going to the gym after I come back from work. Okay, so why do you think that you delay? Why do you think that you're not going? What seems to be the problem?
Why do you think that you delay? Why do you think that you're not going? What seems to be the problem? What seems to be stopping you?
So they can keep swapping backwards and forwards many times and having a conversation with themselves. We had a control condition in this experiment where they just spoke to an animated Freud. They never did the body swapping. So it's the same idea, but no body swapping between the two different bodies. Freud was just prescripted. So
tell me a bit more.
In the first study, all participants improved whether they spoke to, I'm just going to make this quiet again, all participants improved, but they improved more if they, when they were in the Freud body, it moved synchronously with their own body movement, so they got high body ownership over the Freud body, and they improved more if the counselor, the one they spoke to, was Freud, rather than just another copy of themselves. And the second study showed that all participants improved, and they improved more if they did the body swapping with Freud compared with the pre-animated Freud talking to them about their problem. So overall, synchronous embodiment in the Freud body as the counselor was important to help them to address their personal problem. So this is an example of the findings from the second study. This is prior to VR, then 1 week later they have the VR, then 1 week after that we take the measure. The reddish one are the experimental condition, the bluish one is the control condition, and the vertical axis is the proportion of people reporting a change. So as you can see, as you'd expect, prior to the VR, just after speaking to the counsellor, to the real therapist to formulate their problem, there's no difference in the amount of change. Immediately after the VR, more than 80% report a change in the experimental condition. In the control condition is around about 40. And 1 week later, that's still maintained. So it's quite an effective method for self-counseling, because also you can talk to anybody about anything. So we did an experiment with the World Bank where they wanted to discuss work-life balance, and they spoke either to Barack Obama or Michelle Obama, depending on whether it was men or women. And we did one with PepsiCo in New York, and they were interested in fostering creativity, so they spoke to a virtual Steve Jobs. So you can talk about anything. You can say, where am I going to go on holiday this year? I don't know where to choose, and just have a discussion that. So as I said, it's been used by a multinational to simulate creativity and by the World Bank to foster work-life balance. This is the Barack Obama one.
Now listen. Now look in the mirror to your right. Now look in the mirror to your right. Now listen.
Okay, so that was the World Bank one. Now I'm going to move on to, so I've talked about how virtual reality can be used to improve personal problems, to solve personal problems. Now I move on to a social problem. And it's the paradigm here we call the Golden Rule embodiment paradigm, and it's based on something everybody knows from philosophy and from religion. What's hateful for you, don't do it to your fellow. Treat others as you would treat yourself. Treat others as you would want them to treat you. So the idea of this Golden Rule embodiment paradigm is that in virtual reality, this is a paradigm for intervention. It's not a philosophical idea. It's something, actually we do it. So you can directly experience what it's like that you might do to others. This is accomplished through embodied perspective taking. Then you take on the body and perspective of another and experience how you've treated that other. Now I'll show an example of this to make it clearer. So the basic idea is that you're involved in an action that causes harm to another. Not necessarily you, but you may be acquiescing in someone else causing harm to another. You then experience this scenario again from the standpoint of the victim. Then sometime later, like a week later or a few weeks later, there's a test. You're involved in another scenario, similar one, that causes harm to another. How do you respond? Do you try to intervene to help now, or do you just acquiesce and let it happen like maybe the first time? And then when we do this for an experiment, we have a control group who experience this scenario, but not from the embodied perspective of the victim. They just watch everything, but they're not otherwise involved. So we went to United States, northern part of the United States, to a police department, an inner city police department in quite a dangerous area where the police themselves told us don't eat in any cafes around here. So it was, I can't say which city. And we did an experiment with 37 patrol officers. And the idea was that they were going to interrogate a male black robbery suspect. So I'm the policeman, the participant. I'm in the interview room with the suspect, which I'll show you in a minute. And I have another police, a partner, who's a virtual character. And that partner is very violent and aggressive and racially abusive towards the black suspect. And then 21 of them re-experienced the scene again as the black suspect, as the victim, and 16 as an observer through a window outside the interrogation room. So these are some pictures from it. The other officer conducts this aggressive interview. What in the mirror behind, you can see the one standing up is you, is your body representation. And then this is from the viewpoint of the victim, the suspect. And then this is from the observer position. This is the control condition where you're observing it from the outside. You're never really involved. You can faintly see a reflection in the window of your own virtual body. And then a few weeks later, they have a test where they are in a virtual cafe with the same aggressive police partner, and a black male enters the cafe, and immediately the abusive officer starts harassing that customer, accusing him of wanting to steal a woman's handbag. The question is, how do you respond? Do you just let him carry on the abuse, or do you intervene? So this is again some pictures from the cafe, the customer standing by the counter, the aggressive police officer starts accusing the customer of a crime. The customer says he's done nothing, and it all escalates from that. So here is a video that shows this, hopefully. Oops, no. Okay, yeah. So we did this with Jigsaw, which is a Google company. It's very weird operating with this latency. So first there's an embodiment period.
Good morning, guys. My name is Jennifer, and I'm here to share something really special with you. I'm going to show you a set of 4 simple exercises that you can do very easily and very quickly every morning, and just refresh your body and mind. Remember to keep breathing slowly. Breathe in and
So this
out.
is just people get used to virtual reality,
Perfect.
their body, have this
And that's
illusion
it.
of body ownership,
Trust
and
me,
so on.
You do this every morning for just 5 minutes, you're gonna see some serious results.
Now it moves to the police department. Again, the person sees themselves in a mirror, they move, the body moves with them, they have this illusion of body ownership. And the captain or whoever walks in.
Good morning, officers. I have an update about the jewelry store burglary this morning. We managed to pick up 2 subjects, and we have some leads. We caught this guy 1 block west of the... So what do you say? I'll go handle the first subject, and both of you go interview the second one?
Thank you, Johnson. We'll take it from here. So, you want to get started?
Sure. Tell me your name.
I just stop for a second and say that we made this during the pandemic, and everyone was isolated in their own homes. So the one who made, Samir, who made this movie, he used his wife as the police subject, because we didn't have any alternative at that time.
No, I haven't done anything.
Listen, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And trust me, you do not want to test my patience. So either you start talking right now, or we're going to be in here for a long time. Oh, no, look at that. The equipment isn't working. Oh, no. I'm talking about rights. Remember that paper you signed? That gives me and my friend here the right to do whatever the we want. So you listen carefully now, my friend here is going to ask you questions. Answer it. That's 3 strikes right there. So you stop whining about a lawyer, you understand? I'm giving you one last chance to start talking.
Oh, you gotta believe me, man. I had nothing to do with this. I was just trying to catch the bus. Let me go, please.
Man, this guy. You know what? I don't have time for this.
So now the participants embodied in either the victim or as an observer. And if they're embodied in the victim, they go back in time before the interrogation when they're in the cell. And one of the reasons for that was, again, some embodiment exercises. So they see themselves in the mirror. The officer comes and tells them to make some movements.
Yes, you. Lift your right foot. Put it back down. Turn around and put your hands behind your back.
And they don't have real handcuffs. We just tie the two controllers they're holding together.
Thank you, Johnson.
Now they re-experience.
We'll take it from here. So, you want to get started?
Sure. Tell me your name.
Look, man, let me go. I haven't done anything.
Oh, no. Look at that. The equipment isn't working. Oh, no.
Oh, you gotta believe me, man. I had nothing to do with this. I was just trying to catch the bus. Let me go, please.
Man, this guy. You know what? I don't have time for this.
And now we move to the next phase, which was a week or 3 weeks later. This, by the way, is the observer condition, where they're just watching everything on a video and through a screen and through the window, but they're never embodied in the victim. Okay, now we come to the cafe, with 1 to 3 weeks later. This is the test scenario.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
Great. Been so busy, man. On my day off last week, went to see the game. You follow? Damn it. Look at that. Hey, you. The hell are you doing? I'm talking to you. What the hell do you think you're doing?
Me? Look, I'm just here for my coffee, man. I don't want any trouble. Relax.
Don't you tell me to relax. I saw you staring at that lady's bag.
Come on, I wasn't staring at anything.
Are you saying I'm lying then? You accusing me of lying?
Nah, man. I don't know what to say. I'm just here for my coffee, and then I'll leave.
Guy coming in here like he can afford a coffee from this place. Step away from that lady.
But I haven't done anything wrong.
Walks in here dressed like that.
This is crazy. Are you seeing this? Let me go.
Shut the up and do as I
did
say.
Nothing wrong. What's your problem?
Freeze on the ground now.
So, the results were very good. That in the main condition, the probability that they would intervene in the cafe to try to help the victim, the probability that that would happen was more than 80%, but in the observer condition, it was only 23%. In the victim condition, it was 80%, nearly 80%. Yeah, so overall, the probability of positive helping behavior was more than 80%. So this scenario was very successful in, why it's good is that we never lecture to the police and say, this is how you should behave. It's just they just have an experience. There's no like training or anything like that. There's nothing explicit. They just have an experience and they respond. And if they have the experience of being the victim, they respond in one way. And if they don't have the experience of being the victim, they respond, they just carry on their normal behavior. They don't really change. So the last thing I want to talk about is what we've been doing, or one of the things we've been doing in this ERC project, Motive.
Yeah, getting a shiver in the dark. It's raining in the park the main time.
So we've been working on reproducing that from a 1983 concert in London in virtual reality. not just because we kind of like the song, but because there's lots of very interesting problems involved. Computer vision to extract movements from the character, from the video, using old video, simulating, using crowd simulation for the audience, and so on and so on. And then we use the platform for a number of studies, one of which I'll talk about today. So this is one aspect of how it looked a few months ago. So what's very interesting about this is something we knew. We never done anything like this before. We didn't really know how to approach studying it. So what you normally do is you have a hypothesis, you're interested in, say, the illusion of presence or body ownership and this kind of thing, and you do a study, you give questionnaires, you do physiological measures and so on, and you kind of know what you're looking for. But here we embarked on something really quite new, and we didn't have any clear hypothesis. How would people respond to the virtual rock concert? Would they just dismiss it and say, this is stupid, or what? How would they do? What would they do? What factors are most important for acceptability, for enjoyment, for feeling to be at a rock concert? So when we first embarked on this, it seemed like the most innocent experiment we'd ever run. I mean, of course we got ethics approval, but I never thought anything can go wrong from an ethical point of view in a study like this. You go in a virtual concert, you're in the audience, you look at the band and you enjoy the music. That's it. What can go wrong? So we did 2 studies. This again was during lockdowns and so on. So one study we used students from MIT and some online students. And the second study, which was published quite recently, we used students from US, Australia, New Zealand, and again, some online. And rather than just give a questionnaire, we just asked people, write an essay about your experience afterwards. Just write something about what happened. And the results were really unexpected. First of all, I always expected people would concentrate on the band and make criticisms, they're not moving right and that kind of thing. But that didn't really happen. What happened was that the audience around them was far more impactful than what was going on the stage. Some people found the audience disturbing, like in particular, women would say, I'm here alone at this concert, there's these men standing around me, sometimes they're looking at me, I really don't want them to come over and start talking with me. So some of them got quite disturbed. Others would say things like, whenever I looked at this character, he looked back at me and stared at me too long. Or when I looked at this character, he quickly turned away, pretending he wasn't staring at me. So some people, as I said, about half of them, I'd say they got quite disturbed. But from a scientific point of view, this is a fantastic result because it's a really high level of plausibility. Why would you be disturbed unless you're in that place? And also, you have the illusion that these events are really happening. If you're watching a television or even a computer screen and a character stares at you, so what? It doesn't really matter. It's nothing to do with you. They're not even in the same space as you. So the other, of course, there were some failures of expectations, including technical problems, like the more expert people pointed out that they weren't moving their hands correctly on the guitar stems, or the drummer wasn't exactly in time with the beat, and this kind of thing. So how did we analyze this? How did I get these results? We used what's called sentiment analysis, which is a machine learning technique, where people have classified millions and millions of words, and each word is classified as positive, negative, or neutral. And the sentiment of a text is the average sentiment of its words. So for example, this was not good should result in negative sentiment. this was very good should have higher sentiment than just this was good, and so on. So all these kind of things, these programs exist to do this type of thing. So in the R statistical package, there are many different methods for sentiment analysis, and here I used 4, and they will give slightly different scores, though mostly they're correlated. So what I did is that we had sentiment at the whole essay level, so you can classify an entire essay with a single number at the end and say the degree of sentiment of this essay that people wrote is 0.45. Someone else might be minus 3.2, whatever. The strategy was to find sentiment scores on all the 4 measures and then use cluster analysis to find scores close to one another, and then use keyword and summary analysis, again more machine learning techniques, to find commonalities between the clusters. So what you end up with is things like this. Actually, I'll explain it with this one. So this is from 611 sentences, and you end up basically with 3 clusters. And this is just the first 2 principal components of the 4 measures, which account for a pretty high percentage of the overall variability. So you get, in the end, this nice 2D plot, which separates out the 3 clusters very clearly. And then you think, well, what is it? What are these 3 clusters? What do the red ones mean? What are the green and what are the blue? And then you can do a key analysis of what they actually said. The people in cluster 1, what did they actually say? You do an analysis, you extract keywords and short sentences, and you find in cluster 1, this is the highest sentiment cluster, people were saying it was good sound, it's great music, it's effective, because many of them joined in the dancing. They're in the audience who's dancing around them, they join in the dancing. So irresistible movement and so on. Cluster 3, everything's wrong. So these are the people who had the problems. Disproportionate avatar, it was a lonely experience. When I go to a concert, it's normally with friends. I don't go alone. Here I'm at a concert alone, and I'm a woman. These men staring at me. One person says the men around them were distracting creeps. The crowd, but another thing is, in the second study, we made most of the crowd female to avoid this problem, or to see what would happen if you get rid of all the men in the crowd. How do they respond? So here they found that those females stared at them too long. When they looked at them, they stared back, and it was too long. And the audience wasn't diverse enough, the animations were strange, it was unnerving. And in cluster 2, you get some positive and some negative sentiment. So it's a really nice, we would never have discovered any of this using questionnaires. And questionnaires, yeah, we'd probably got high scores on plausibility, high scores on presence. We would never have known any of these kind of under the surface things. And also, presence can be high, but sentiment low. I mean, you can only be disturbed by someone staring at you if you have the feeling that they're really there and they're staring at you. This is high plausibility, low sentiment. So this method is good for generating information to improve an application. By the way, some applications need low sentiment. If you're using virtual reality for psychotherapy, you want people to be anxious and disturbed in order to be able to do the psychotherapy on them. So high sentiment, high plausibility and presence doesn't necessarily mean high sentiment. Sometimes you want low sentiment. So we learned loads of things about how to improve our application, like the participants alone, which is very unusual for concert experiences. You usually go with the family or friends. So we then added into a later version of the concert that you can go with other people who you can see in real time around you. And I won't go into all these, but basically these are all the various problems that we found. Like I mentioned, the crowd wasn't diverse enough. They didn't interact with you except for gaze and stuff like that. So conclusions. Virtual reality is often thought of as a way to simulate reality. And then, of course, as I said at the beginning, there's many applications where this is important, like for training and learning things and so on. You really do want to simulate the real world. But for me, it's always been, Yorgos referred to my crazy ideas. Over the years, much more interesting to me is to use virtual reality to go beyond what's possible in reality, such as the body swapping techniques, exploit VR for its potential to go beyond what's possible in reality. And for example, once we've created a virtual concert, we can put participants anywhere we want in the scenario. So we have a study, we're just waiting for the ethics approval, where you become the lead singer of the band, and we want to see how you respond and react to that. So you're up there on the stage and you see the audience down there. And also you can attend it in real time with your friends. So this is becoming Mark Knopfler.
Today is a very important day. This is our biggest concert to date.
So you spend some time there, then you're on the stage. And this is one where those of you who know Ramon, you're in the virtual reality in the concert and your friends are there. These are various people from the lab who we scanned and put in there. So you can attend along with friends, and we'll be doing a study on that later. So of course this isn't all my work. This is various people from the group who've contributed in various ways to all of the studies that I've talked about today. And this is the funding. Almost all of it, well, all of this is actually from European Union funds. And yeah, that completes my talk.